Given everything we know today, what do you see as the future of Bitcoin?
So when people say, can Bitcoin go higher than 100K? Well, the way I think about it is right now, Bitcoin's about $1.5 trillion in market cap. It's going after a $400 to $500 trillion opportunity. So I think Bitcoin still has a 400 to 500x left in it. And we see that as a company. We onboard institutions, businesses, retail. We support the dollar, the pound, the euro. So we see the same demand globally, the same growth prospects globally. And that's where the product market fit is for us.
People that we've talked to over the last couple of days have talked about the public companies adopting the Bitcoin standard and putting Bitcoin in their treasury. Strike is not only a great Bitcoin brand, it's not only a fast growing kind of user platform. You also have Bitcoin on your balance sheet, and you and I know each other well enough at this point that I'm pretty sure every time you make a decision, it is denominated in Bitcoin, including like, what do I eat for lunch today? What have been the pros and cons, and what have you learned about operating with that Bitcoin standard as a private company?
Yeah, I mean, I got my comms team, which is just a beautiful, awesome, hardworking woman named Lavinia back there. And we debate all the time. Strike's a private company. And so people don't know, but I would assume it's one of the most profitable Bitcoin companies in the world. I mean, we operate well over 85% gross profit margins. We've got some of the highest EBITDA margins in the world, even in the public markets. So we are a business that is like MicroStrategy. We're just in the private sector, but we sweep all of our cash flows into Bitcoin. We hold the minimum amount of cash reasonable as a business, as a person, as an individual. I own $0 US. And so it changes everything in a really fundamental principled way, because as a company, listen, if the cost of capital is the dollar, it's effectively zero. And you've got excess amounts of venture and people willing to just throw cash at you. And it's very hard to make decisions. Well, what are we supposed to do with all this money? Let's turn on Instagram marketing ads. Let's launch 100 products. Let's open a nice office in New York City. And you're burning capital because the cost of capital is zero, right? It can't get any worse than holding dollars, because that's just bleeding to death. So you might as well just punt on whatever. This employee has a cool idea. Yeah, go work on it. All of a sudden, if we introduce our treasury asset and the way we measure capital in something that's compound annual growth rate is 60% over the last 10 years, when an employee comes to me and says, I have an idea, I say, how good of an idea? 61% every year? Good? Because if not, get the fuck out of my office. Sorry. And that's built a really good culture. Our growth rate is astounding, our efficiency. So when I talk about things like EBITDA margins, gross profit margins, we run a tight ship. And, I'm a Midwest, founder that was raised in the Chicago pits by traders, but also our governance and our culture is imposed by Bitcoin. And that's the real cost of capital that the world didn't have before. You were racing against growth. Companies were doing stock buybacks. And now all of a sudden, what Michael's doing at MSTR, what we're doing at Strike, is imposing, real physical constraints and costs of capital that, make humans better and make decisions easier to make.
Talk about the cycle, right? You've got a business where I'm an investor in Strike, so I've seen the financials. They're very good. But as you build your business, if these 4-year cycles persist, how do you insulate yourself from seeing your balance sheet shrink by 80% because the price of Bitcoin is contracting and then it's expanding? And there's this cyclicality that I think people say to themselves, it sounds great to be exposed to Bitcoin when the price is going up. Well, if I'm also got my entire company's balance sheet in Bitcoin on the way down, that doesn't feel as good. And so how do you guys think about that?
Being profitable is a moral imperative before a financial one. The way we think about it is, producing more value for the world than you consume from the world is being a good person or a good company. It's quite literally, in the financial sense, making the world a better place. So I have a rule at my business. I will never run Strike unprofitably, because we're taking advantage of the world, or advantage of how easy money is, or advantage of overinflated venture markets because of COVID. And so we principally believe that we are here to do more for the world than we take from the world. And then for that reason and purpose, we're never at risk. We're not levered. There is no counterparty risk to us blowing up. Bitcoin can go down as much as it wants. It doesn't matter. And on Bitcoin's volatility, Satoshi, if I wasn't a founder and CEO of Strike, I would be a Bitcoin historian. I've been in Bitcoin for 12 years. I love being a part of its story and reminiscing on the early forums. And someone was asking Satoshi about the volatility. And he said, if we wanted a more stable value, we can make the currency units dynamic. We can change how much Bitcoin should exist based on trying to achieve a stable value. If we want dynamic price, meaning it's going to bounce around a lot, we should fix the currency units. And he was being a little humble and joking, but the point is, if you're going to give the world an absolute scarce asset, the only provably fixed asset in the history of our species, and you're going to give it global free market access, it's going to be volatile. And where there's risk, there's reward. If you look at Bitcoin Sharpe ratio, it's greater than the Mag 7, than the S&P 500, than gold. And so as a business too, we accept that. I firmly believe that any attempt to restore harmony in society rests on the renewal of personal responsibility. And so us as a business, we're not reliant on Jerome Powell. We don't care about what Mark Andreessen is going to start investing in. We take a personal responsibility to be ethically and morally profitable because we want to be good for the world. We want to make progress in the world. We want to be making the world a better place. And we accept the risks of being in this industry because we understand the reward. And we're happy to be here. We're happy to embrace that volatility, because if you take it away, then I don't think we can change the world. The upside isn't as high, right? There's a correlation there. I don't want to, run a bakery or a business that's a little bit more mundane. I want to play in the big leagues. I want to change the world. And
How do you view the new administration and their support for Bitcoin and what they should do?
I hate politics, man. Got them. What do I think they should do? Or what? Listen, what did I tell?
If you were president for the day, what would you do?
No, we could go back, rewind time a bit. What did I tell another president to do? I told him, listen, governments aren't designed to be good at engineering consumer products. So I was very against the Chivo wallet, for example. What do you want? You want Jack Dorsey, you want Michael Saylor, you want these guys to come build stuff for your citizens. Jack Dorsey's going to be way better at building stuff than you are. So give favorable regulation, favorable tax treatment, allow them to invest back into your country, right? Look at what Tether's doing. Tether has probably invested more in El Salvador because they've gotten favorable regulation and favorable tax treatment than if they were trying to claw pennies out of them with overtaxation, right? So pro-regulation, pro-growth, or pro-favorable regulation, pro-growth, be reasonable in, Trump's talking about tax cuts and ways to inspire growth. And then I think that you want to align incentives with the space. Buy some. Everyone in this room knows that your relationship with Bitcoin is different as soon as you own a little bit. And so I think just making the United States a Bitcoiner, at the very least, aligns with the industry that's arguably the fastest growing and creating the most wealth. Let's be clear. In 15 years, Bitcoin's created $2 trillion worth of new wealth. A lot of that's in this country. And at current growth rates, it's going to be tens of trillions of dollars over the next 10 years. So that was my suggestion to Naid. You're going to attract the most profitable company in the world per employee, and probably in the history of our species in Tether. You've got, Block and Square interested in El Salvador. You've got Michael Saylor meeting with El Salvador, and that's because of their stance. And then own some. Become in line and incentivized with the space. Put some skin in the game. I would say the same thing to Trump.
ETFs are now popular. Plenty of people who did not own Bitcoin, their first interaction is through those ETFs. There's a financialization of Bitcoin that's happening, and it feels like there's a little bit of a trade-off. Maybe the ethos and the reasons why you bought Bitcoin may not be present when this new class of Bitcoiner is coming in because of that financialization, but you need those people if you want the, ever elusive mass adoption. How do you think about this trade-off of we want as many people to have exposure to Bitcoin as possible, but you also don't want to have the kind of dilution of the message of the ethos and the values of Bitcoin?
Listen, Bitcoin is a permissionless network. I can never understand for the life of me when certain Bitcoiners are like, someone kicked BlackRock out. Like, who elected you the president of Bitcoin, moron? So it's what Bitcoin in the eye of the beholder. And so I welcome Wall Street. They're trying to solve very specific problems. The bond market, not good. The long-term viability right now of those instruments, not good. It looks like the United States and Trump are going to get their weaker dollar and finance reshoring and do what they need to do at the expense of those buying these long-duration instruments. So what is Wall Street doing? Larry Fink's trying to sell people what they need, which is a way to retain purchasing power and actually be performant in real terms. If you do the math on like a 60-40 portfolio versus like a 55-45 with a little Bitcoin or a 60-35-5, you can look at the graph. It's like just a little exposure to this thing goes a long way for the biggest financial market in the world, which is like bond market, treasuries. And so that's fine with me. Would I want to broker my access to Bitcoin through Larry Fink? Yeah, no thanks. I don't own any ETFs. I also don't own MSTR. As much as I love Sailor, like, I'm cool, man. I don't know you that well. So I own my own Bitcoin. But that's fine. And the free market will like figure these things out in the meantime. So I think it's great. Bitcoin's like universal acid. Somehow it seeps into areas that you never would have expected and it conquers it. And, Wall Street's no exception.